Well, I'll go ahead and introduce myself. I'm Tim. I'm from Indiana. I run the gracewithsalt.com website. Have over 170 articles up there on biblical authority, creation, evolution, all that stuff. And I actually came across your YouTube channel because I had just recently watched the Truth Group's videos, the debunked videos. And so your video got recommended to me.
Yeah.
And, well, I'll let you introduce yourself, I guess, a little bit, too.
Yeah, I mean, that's from, October of 2012, and, I was a little rowdier. I was a little, kind of a, I don't talk like that in real life, but I tend to, I'm talking to a microphone at the end of the day when I do those videos, so it's really easy to just kind of loose. But anyways, religion's been, a big part of my life. Kindergarten through 8th grade was Catholic school, so I did that for 9 years. Always believed in Jesus, God, the Bible. Even though I know you're probably Catholic, that's not the correct, version. I actually came to realize that when I became a born-again Christian. And then I went to a public high school, and then about halfway through, I just lost my faith, basically. That had nothing to do with the fact that it was public high school. That was just a personal, no one ever talked about religion. And basically where I am right now, I'm just an agnostic. Is there a God? I don't know. I love having these discussions and whatnot, though. Where I live, we get Jehovah's Witnesses, Mormons come to our door, talk to them all the time. Love it. They're great people. So I love the discussion, honestly. But that's about it. Yeah. So do you, I was kind of skimming through your website. Are you like a priest or something? Like a minister? Do you run a ministry?
No, I mean, in my real life,
just the website.
In my real life, I'm a Christian counselor. Also a worship leader, Sunday school teacher, whatever. Those are my, ministry titles. But the blog is really just for, my own fun. That's really all that is. I went to the, Creation Museum a few years ago and was really inspired and kind of changed everything for me, kind of gave me an, outlook on where I wanted to go, what I wanted to do. But no, I guess I probably should have watched more of your stuff because I didn't realize you were agnostic.
No, don't do that. No, because I've realized honestly, my videos are for, fundamentalists in a sense. I have no problem with people believing Jesus. I think that's great. But when you go crazy with it and I don't know, that fundamentalist kind of, I don't know. But anyway, my videos aren't really, they're really just for people who agree with me to laugh. That's what it kind of comes down. So lately I've been trying to kind of be more mainstream with it. Basically, watching more of my videos is not gonna, they're kind of, they're I don't know. They're kind of for the people who agree with me. That's my point. Yeah. But,
the first thing I commented on your, response to the Truth Group, was that I didn't think that you actually, I actually stopped watching. I didn't finish it, probably because I'm lazy.
No, I understand. Totally
no, their first step for proving God, I commented that I feel like you failed to respond to even their first step.
We can go through that if you want. Yeah. Go through every single point in the the Truth video. I would, whatever, anything's good.
Well, I'd like to just finish up that conversation about that first step, because really, I didn't really watch what you had to say about the rest. That's fine.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm just cursing the whole video. Don't even bother.
But we also went on to talk about that, why no one believes, atheism or naturalism is true video. So we went on to talk about that a little. So I want to talk about that too. But the first point, the first point that the Truth Group was making, I believe, was that all information has a creator. They said the example of the book in the library and things like that. And it seemed to me that you were basically agreeing and then just turning it back on them and saying, well, then God must have a creator.
Yeah.
Okay, I got that right.
But I mean, that's, you're not happy with that because that's not really like a argument, that's just, flipping it on them, basically. You want like an actual argument presented.
It almost sounded like your response was like shooting your own position in the foot. It was saying, yeah, you're right.
No, I know what you're saying, but, basically he's sort of like for that, he's comparing the two, books with people. Like, books were created by people are way more complicated than books, so people must have also been created, etc. But I mean, we can, we observe people making books. We don't observe gods making universes, if that's any response, that sort of thing. I mean, ultimately, everything has information. Everything is information. It doesn't matter. A book, a rock outside is more complicated than a book. That sort of thing. But I mean, so basically, the argument goes: the more complex it is, it must have a designer. But then, when you get to God, which is the most complex thing you could ever fathom, he doesn't have a creator. So it's like the logic kind of just,
You kind of agree with the concept, but then it doesn't make sense because my own position, is, saying, well, God doesn't have a,
yeah. I know there's answers to why God doesn't have a creator because he's God. I know those answers and stuff. I'm just saying if we're going to go by that logic, God should have a creator. That's basically the gist of it. Yeah. I do that the whole video, so don't even bother. Like for instance, he goes, the universe, what was it? Basically the universe had a beginning, etc. And I just go, I'm just going to deny science and say the universe always existed. That was basically my argument. Don't watch the video. That's what I'm saying. I curse. I don't even bother.
But no, I mean, I think, the very first, verse of the Bible sets up why God doesn't need a creator. I think very first verse sets up that God creates time, space, and matter in the first verse. And it says, in the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. In the beginning is time, the heavens is space, and the earth is matter. So if he creates time, space, and matter, all the things we use to define the universe and science or whatever, if he makes it all, then he is the first cause. He doesn't need a creator then.
Well, let's talk about, let's talk about creation. Let's see here. So God, when we say, like, someone created a book, really what they did is they transformed, matter into a page, and then they transform their ideas onto a page. No one really creates. No human being actually creates. They just transform matter, ultimately. Yeah, like, do you understand that? Like no one actually literally creates. I don't I just transform things. That's what people do. Like, do you agree with that?
Like, as in, like, making a book, you're not, like, making it from scratch. There's wood that's cut down that's made into paper, and that's what you're saying.
Ultimately, you're getting stuff and putting it together. That's what we basically do. So what I would ask, for God, did he make the universe from nothing, or did he just transform already existing things and then put them together?
Mm-hmm. I'd say that he would have made the universe from nothing, it seems, from what we know, that he made it from nothing.
But, we all know nothing just makes nothing. Nothing comes from nothing. That's what I always hear. But, no, basically the argument I'm getting at is, God spoke the universe into existence. So that's something. So he used words to make the universe. So that would be transformation. Transform words into matter, transform words into time, or whatever. So where did his words come from? And then you just, you go on from there.
But does it really matter? Does that matter?
Yeah.
It does? Why does that matter?
I mean, honestly, if,
would I not believe in God because I don't know where his words came from?
Oh, no. I just love this guy. I'm not, have any interest in, disproving Christianity or God. I just love understanding and whatnot. But,
So there's certain assumptions. What you're inevitably going to get at then is the Christian then is definitely going to have certain assumptions then as well. They're assuming that God could make words in the beginning to create things with. We're just going to take that and not really know how to explain it. So we're just going to believe that and not know exactly how to explain it, but we just accept it.
Yeah. I mean, if I believed in God, though, I probably think the same way, but I would be very interested in how it came about, because it's not just when we say the Big Bang Theory, we don't just say, the universe expanded, that's it. No, we have, good reasons to think that, so when you say God did it, you want to find certain things that you can go, okay, see, this is how we did. You want to find certain things to build up a model, to understand. I don't think the Big Bang rules out God. It just, I'm very curious to know how he did it. Just because I know he did it, that wouldn't change anything. That doesn't really tell me anything. I want to know how. That's the real question.
I think that's a fair question. I just don't think we're going to have answers to it here, but I think it's a fair question. I don't see a problem with that.
Yeah. I mean, that's why we have science. It's is there anything with that you want to continue on with?
Let me think for a second here. I want to make sure I don't miss anything with that before I try to jump topics or anything. Well, okay, we'll just put it as an open-end question then. If all things, maybe you answered this, maybe I missed it. But if you already are kind of agreeing with them that, information requires a creator,
well, let me just talk about it. Do you information in the sense of a sentence?
Well, let's just be very specific. There's information in our DNA, obviously. Okay. So it would, if you agree that information requires a creator, then what is your position on the information in our DNA? That's a basic question.
Well, when you say information or DNA, what do you mean by information? Because technically everything is information. A cell, a rock, everything has atoms. It's all information. So, do you mean I hear a lot from the Christians, DNA has a language. Do you mean that particularly? If God created everything, whether I'm a human being or not, it doesn't really matter. It's the fact that he created it.
The fact that we can even push together logical statements, is unfathomable to me. That I hate to use the word accidental because I know that's not correct, but that these random happenings came together. Maybe give me a better word than accidentally, but accidentally, and now we have this language system that makes sense and works. I can't fathom.
Oh, I'm very overwhelmed by just existence and everything. I totally understand the belief in God, obviously, but it could be I think there's good reasons to, obviously, but I think it could be sort of like a self-fulfilling prophecy in the sense of we're here and we just can't explain it. How is it that we can have sentences and make things work, but it's well, that's how we are. That's we couldn't even be saying that unless we could make sentences, that sort of thing. The thing to me though is life's own existence is overwhelming to me, but the fact that life exists on Earth is not overwhelming to me. The fact that it can exist is what makes me scratch my head.
Okay, that's fair enough.
But I mean, no, but that's, I think ultimately that's kind of a stalemate, or ultimately you do have to prove God, but yeah, I understand where you're coming from, the information sort of thing, so God, creating this, etc.
I guess sometimes, I don't know if this is overused, but you walk into a forest and you see a painting hanging on a tree. You don't assume that it painted itself and hung itself on the tree. It just seems like I couldn't take myself seriously if I couldn't bring myself to do that. If I couldn't bring myself to make that statement, I would never make the statement that this all came together without, Creator as well.
I understand the point, but here's the argument I've heard with that. Basically, that's basically the watch on the sand argument. You find a watch on the sand and it must be a creator. Well, the thing with, like you said, a painting in a forest, you said a painting and a forest, so there's obviously some kind of contrast with that. Basically, you have nature and you have something obviously created by a person. Mm-hmm. So you kind of in order to say one was definitely created by a person, and then the other, you say the forest is created by God, you kind of have have a contrast. So if you're going to say, I found a watch and that must have a creator, basically if you're saying God created everything, basically you're on a beach with an infinite number of watches, and you have nothing to contrast with. You're just basically, everything around you has been created by something, instead of just that single painting, I wore things.
Yeah, I don't think I'm really putting a contrast between the forest being created by God and that. I don't think I'm doing that. I'm saying if I were an atheist, I would feel like I would logically, and if I walked in the forest and saw that painting hanging on the tree, I feel like I would almost, to stay logically consistent with my own beliefs, it would not be out of my realm of possibilities that painting created itself.
Well, no one is suggesting the painting created itself, but that's, what was I say? That's sort of the thing. We observe paintings being created, but we don't observe forces. Well, we can observe forces created. Let's take a tree, for example, trees just technically grow themselves. But then you ask the question where they come from. But, I don't even know where I'm getting anymore. No, I understand the argument,
I'll be honest, these sorts of discussions about atheism or naturalism or this sort of thing, it's not really my strong foot. So I'm not a naturalist either. I don't that's not something I necessarily subscribe to. I just do you want to talk about that though? You were saying supernatural explanation for the natural. You're kind of getting into yeah, I wanted to get into that other video. It was put up by InspiringPhilosophy. And
I actually watched the video, and I watched actually a couple others, and I gotta say, the guy has he makes great videos, great quality, everything's great, horrible arguments.
Well, I'll be interested in hearing.
He's so great at it, but I think the arguments are just, I don't know. Do you know a lot of those arguments well? Because I'd love to respond to them.
Well, I want to just do that one, because I really haven't watched a whole lot more of his. But it seemed like the one he put up, which was why no one believes in atheism or naturalism. There's a lot to it. But it seemed like to me, and you tell me if I got this wrong, but the main premise seemed that it was the idea that if natural selection only exists to further our survival, then truth isn't necessarily absolute, but only what we need to know to survive. Therefore, there's no way to truly believe in naturalism because you would never know if it's true.
Mm-hmm.
Did I get that right?
Yeah. See, this is like, this is like taking something someone said and then building up like a puzzle with it. And the guy, like, see, the guy's not like he's totally cool. He makes, very quality videos. I just don't get how he could, like, say that. Like,
do you follow the logic at all?
I understand why he's saying that, but I don't think that's true. So basically, yeah, natural selection, basically it only helps us survive. I mean, it's just survival. So therefore we can't know anything for sure, or it doesn't necessarily tell us what is true.
Well, one of the points in his video was he started talking about paranoia. And he started saying it's actually better for survival to be a paranoid person, which is, it prolongs survival or something like that. I don't know where he came up with that part.
Well, yeah, it's the, basically you have two people, okay? And these are like, let's say cavemen, okay? You have two people. Both of them hear a noise, okay? One of them investigates and one of them doesn't. The one who doesn't gets eaten by the bear, and the one who does investigate knows it's a bear, so he runs. And then he survives, and then his genes pass on. But where we've come to in society, like that's just innate in us, and, mild paranoia is basically useful. I think, the more you know, the more freaked out you get. But I think the more you even know, the less freaked out you get, because you realize, like, sharks are scary, but you know that not many people die from sharks every year. So, yeah, so I mean, it's just like he takes something that may not necessarily be true and just goes off with it on just kind of. I generally try to avoid videos like that because the whole time I'm just smacking my head wanting to, like, say something. I want to, like, I'd rather talk to that person in real life,
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you, my reaction to it was pretty strong because for the longest time I've always thought that, my position, which is young earth creationism, is an internally consistent position. Like, based on my presuppositions, my conclusions make sense. And I've also said that atheism is internally consistent. Based on their presuppositions, the conclusions make sense.
Do you mean inconsistent?
No, I've always said it is consistent. It's consistent based on its presuppositions. The conclusions follow from it. What I've said has never made sense, and I still stand by this, is, old earth creationism. Like, that doesn't seem to make sense to me at all. I can't follow that one.
I love to talk about all that creationism.
Yeah, I can find the errors in that in a heartbeat. But this video seemed to open my eyes to the inconsistencies of atheism.
But I mean, atheism isn't. What do you think? I mean, what is atheism? What do you think? I mean, what do you think atheism is?
Well, obviously, atheism is just a lack of belief in God.
Yeah, I mean, so it doesn't tell you anything about someone's political ideology. It doesn't tell someone about their beliefs about nature or the world. You can be an atheist and think that there's an afterlife. The only requirement for atheism is you do not believe in God. And in a sense, technically, I am an atheist because I don't believe in God. I just, I'm more agnostic atheist, I guess. But, I mean, that's the only requirement. So it's not necessarily assuming that nature is the only thing. You can believe in a spiritual dimension of being atheist, So it's more, I mean, if anything, it's more just the argument against.
Yeah, that's a fair point. I think it's a small percentage, that would be there. So I think I think he was going after a majority who is going to be, evolutionary atheist. No God, naturalist.
Well, naturalism and evolution aren't linked either. They aren't.
Right. Well, I did copy down a couple of the quotes he did in the video because I wanted to kind of get your reaction, see what you think. Because to me, I was pretty impressed. But you show me where I'm wrong. The first one he put up was Richard Dawkins from The God Delusion. And it said, "Since we are creatures of natural selection, we cannot totally trust our own senses."
I've heard that. That's the, that's sort of the philosophical, inquiry. That's like one of the first things you learn about. My response to that is, what's the alternative? In what version of existence can you really trust your senses? Where you can go, oh yeah, I can trust my senses because,
I think the counterpoint is, because we can trust our senses, because they do give us accurate information about the world.
Well, how do we know that, though? That's sort of the argument.
Well, because of science, because of how we test it, and it gives us the same.
Well, no. I mean, science tries to factor out our senses. Science, math, that is trying to get as accurate as possible without our, thinking of it, without our just assuming, science, and that's why we test it over and over again.
But senses meaning like, our vision or our hearing or,
and ultimately we have to use those to observe the science anyway.
Yeah. So I think, I'm not exactly sure, but the counter argument seems to be that because we can trust our senses, help me finish this. Because we can trust.
Because we can trust our senses. I don't know if he basically say if there was a God, he gives us the information, he gives us the knowledge.
Because there's an order. Because there is an order. Because there is that sort of thing. That's why science works. That's why.
See, that's like assuming the answer before asking the question. I mean, because it's kind of like, because what I would ask to that guy, and I guess to you, how does God know he can trust his own senses? Where is he getting that? They're just, to me, adding God to the equation does not solve anything. Like, that's sort of like his arguments. He takes something he already believes and then just finds a way to get there. Very good videos, though, and very nice and everything, I'm not like, oh, this guy's such an ignorant jerk, but he's just kind of poor arguments.
So, I mean, the naturalist or the atheist or whatever you want to call it, whatever this example is that the guy's putting the video towards, and he says we cannot totally trust our own senses, and you agree, Richard Dawkins quote. So I guess I'm getting into a bigger topic and maybe we shouldn't go there, but then the question is, how do you know? Then how does anyone know? Are you just saying no one really knows?
Well, ultimately you have to get your foot off the ground, because I could, let's say I died and we all went to heaven, okay? How would we then know that we're actually in heaven and that, that even God's in some, he's being tricked as well and we're all in this fake, simulation or something? Like, there's really, at the end of the day, you can add infinity gods. There's no other way to get around that idea. How can you trust your senses? So, so I don't, adding God to the equation, I don't get how that solves.
I guess the theist response would be, then, I guess I've already said it though, would be, because we can trust our senses, then that's one of the evidences of God.
But how do we know we can trust it? Like, how do we know that we know, I understand, yeah. I mean, it's really just a stalemate, with that. Do you find my answers useful, or?
Oh yeah, no, it's good, good. A lot of these quotes I wrote down are pretty much the same thing. I mean, he used another one from Charles Darwin, but kind of the same thing. I guess it's a little different. With me, the horrid doubt always arises whether the convictions of man's mind, which has been developed from the mind of the lower animals, are of any value or at all trustworthy. That was Darwin's quote. And what I find interesting about this is, I think he has a point, because, it's almost like we're assuming that we have the ultimate knowledge as human beings, and what we say is the absolute truth.
No. Science doesn't work like that.
No?
The first step to knowledge is knowing that you know nothing. Like, that's the first step. Like, I start from, I don't know anything, let me find out. It's not like we say, okay, we know everything, I don't want to say this is how you think, but sort of, if you're gonna go with God, right, and sort of like, presuppositionalist or whatever, you're basically assuming you know what to know, and then finding your answers to that kind of conclusion. But
in the end, the atheist or whatever is still in a sense, doing much of the same thing. They're saying, here's how the world was created, here's how...
Well, I mean, they don't, but they didn't just make that up, though. They have good scientific reasons. Yeah. I mean, like, because I would like to get into, like, creationism with you, and, you know, because I went on your website, and I gotta admit, I was a little disappointed to see that, Answers in Genesis stuff, because I honestly thought you were kind of, like, in the William Lane Craig camp, which I think this guy is, which is... You know, he is a
theistic evolution. I know that.
Yeah. I mean, he fully accepts the science, and that doesn't shake his faith. You know, and I'm fine with that. You know, but yeah. Do you follow Craig? Do you think he's, you know, like that's kind of like that's great?
Craig's good and all. I always have a little bit of a problem following someone who will, you know, openly compromise their own Bible to give their own arguments. That seems like a shot in their own foot. But no, I mean, he's good at very, very many things. Very many things.
Well, yeah, I would like to talk about the young Earth creation stuff. So why, what convinced you to be a young Earth creationist?
It's a tough question. I mean, there's a lot of things over many years, probably. In fact, I probably always was, but I never really thought about it. It was never really an issue to me until I went to the Creation Museum the first time. And my biggest issue was I could not connect the Old Testament to the New Testament. Like, I just didn't get it. It was so different to me. It was like, I don't get it. What is the connection here? And the museum takes you, you know, from the very beginning through the Bible. And lays it all out. And when I saw it in that order and laid out, all of a sudden, all the lights came on. And it all made sense now. Like, I was a gospel Christian. You know, I was Matthew, Mark, Luke, John, and that's all that matters. And then when this idea of Genesis...
That's how you should have stayed.
Yeah, when Genesis was open, my eyes were opened up to what Genesis was really saying, I realized that it set the foundation for everything I'd heard from the Gospels. And so then I just started research more and more and more, and it just made sense. And I don't know, you got any more of a specific question? I guess that's kind of a big question, but
no, that's yeah. Did you ever like watch Ken Hovind stuff or anything like that?
He's interesting, man. His stuff. I mean, I know there's a lot of controversy with Kent Hovind, but
well, I mean, yeah, it's irrelevant. Who cares about that jail stuff? I mean, what matters is arguments.
Yeah, I mean, I'm very interested in his arguments about like the length of age of things, because he makes a lot of arguments that have to do with like, and I think Answers in Genesis says don't even talk about this, but he talks about how, you know, if people lived up to 900 years, then probably animals did too, and some certain types of lizards don't stop growing, so there's your dinosaurs, and your brow ridges and things like that, jaws don't stop growing, so there's your Neanderthals, stuff like that. I think it's interesting. I don't think there's any way to really test that out. I think it's just hypothetical, but it's interesting to think about. That's about all I do with Kent Hovind, probably. I think that's some interesting stuff.
Oh, this is going to be a random question. I don't want to get off topic. I just want to put this. It's going to sort of be connected. Do you subscribe to the New World Order Illuminati belief?
No, I really don't know much about it.
Okay. Because he does. Ken Hovind. That's basically the Illuminati New World Order belief comes down to that basically Satan. Like, you ever seen that triangle on your dollar bill? Yeah, it's like sort of like the all-seeing eye. Satan is controlling the world. That's why scientists accept evolution, because Satan, you know, that sort of thing. That's what Ken Hovind thinks.
Well, not that much. I mean, I believe Satan's in control of this world. I think God handed it over to him, and he's in control of it. Yeah.
I had a conversation with the Jehovah's Witness about that, and he had a different opinion at the end.
I don't think like scientists accept evolution because there's some big controversy, or like they're trying to some big, you know, they're trying to hide something or something. Nothing like that.
Okay.
Nothing like that.
Okay, yeah. Okay.
It makes, I've always said that evolution absolutely makes sense if you accept the starting assumptions that they accept. It does.
What would be one of the starting assumptions?
Well, I think there's three major views. There's the atheistic evolution. There's biblical creation, which would be mine, the young Earth, and then there's theistic evolution, the God used evolution. You know, I think there's three assumptions for atheistic evolution. I'd be the first is naturalism, belief that all things arise naturally without divine intervention, and uniformitarianism, the belief that today's processes have remained constant through all of history. Combine that with natural selection, you know, and then you've got atheistic evolution. So, I think only one of those parts is verifiable scientifically. That's natural selection. Naturalism and uniformitarianism, I don't think you can verify that scientifically, because obviously you can't observe the entire past. So, two assumptions and one scientific position. Now, for my position, young Earth creationism, you still have natural selection. We don't disagree with that. You know, things change, mutations occur, things like that. Adaptation to environment, whatever. That happens. But you combine it with supernaturalism instead of naturalism. And then you combine it with catastrophism instead of uniformitarianism. So, the belief that several catastrophic events that laid out in the Bible would accelerate your uniform timeline. So if you know... Do you know what I mean by that?
Yes, I mean, I know, I'm not in the dark about anything what you're talking about. I know exactly, you know, these kind of things. Do you know what evolution is, though? It has nothing to do with the origins of the universe, planets, anything, you know. It doesn't even have anything to do with the origins of life, you know. And that's basically where God is right now. The origins of life, the origins of the universe, origin of consciousness, that sort of thing. To me, there is no theistic evolution. There is no atheist evolution. There's the theory of evolution and everybody else's opinion, you know. To me, you know, the Bible says God, basically holds us onto the earth. That's, I think that's in the Old Testament. Are you familiar with that passage? Like, God holds things to the earth. It's basically gravity. That's what it's sort of talking about. But we have the theory of gravity, but that doesn't, therefore God doesn't exist because now we have the theory of gravity. To me, there is no, sort of controversy with that. It's just a theory about how life adapts and evolves. It has nothing to do with whether gods exist or whether anything of that nature, you know. I think,
the kicker in my argument is basically uniformitarianism versus catastrophism. You can't prove either. So therefore, it's a belief system in the end, either way.
Yeah, but, so you're saying we have to observe it in order to go, okay.
We observe things forming or things going on slowly today. So...
But why... basically, isn't that, sort of naturalism? Isn't that sort of the default position? We're assuming everything, you know, the sun still was hot, you know, a billion years ago. The sun, this was like this. We're assuming that because there's no other evidence to say the other way. So, that's sort of the thing.
Yeah, no, I understand uniformitarianism. It makes sense. What I'm saying is it doesn't cancel out catastrophism, though. It doesn't cancel it out.
Which is,
what's that exactly?
From catastrophism, you got three biblical events that would cause problems on the timeline.
The fall of man. That
Six-day creation obviously would speed things up a bit. Fall of man would have changed a lot of functions in the world, and the flood would have had a pretty darn big effect on the world as well. So if you take those three events, there's a reason why when we ignore those events, we see an old Earth. We see an old universe. Well, let's just mess with the Earth for now. We see an old Earth when we ignore those positions. Now, if those things happen, then it makes sense that we see an old Earth when we ignore them, when we pretend they didn't happen.
Could it be because that they didn't actually happen, though? And that's why we see them? I mean, yeah, I mean, like, if I were to say, there is no evidence for a global flood, you would give me creationist evidence, etc. But then I would give you the scientific community versus that evidence. So, I mean, ultimately, the consensus is with the scientific community there is no global. To me, this doesn't roll off the Bible. If there is no global flood, that's kind of missing the point. I don't think it needed to happen in order to have a point. Basically, like, why do you think the scientific community doesn't say there's a global flood? I mean, they have the evidence and they're just ignoring it. Because I know you don't subscribe to the New World Order thing, so you're not thinking there's a conspiracy.
Right.
So why do you think?
Why do they not believe in a global flood? Because, putting it very simply, which there's a lot more you can go into, is that uniformitarianism. Really, if you think about it, they see things forming slowly today, geologically, and so their default, like you said, default assumption is that it just has always been that way. They look at the Grand Canyon and they see this little Colorado River cutting through it very, very slowly. So they say, well, look at how slowly it's going. We know it's been doing it for millions of years.
Which Grand Canyon, though?
What's that?
Which Grand Canyon?
Arizona.
How many are there?
I don't know.
Well, shouldn't there be like
10,000 if there was a flood?
Oh, there's a lot.
There's a global
flood.
But,
okay, so, I mean, it's two different starting assumptions, the catastrophic or the uniformitarianism. The uniformitarianism says a little bit of water over a long period of time, and the catastrophism says a lot of water over a little bit of time.
Oh, okay, I got you. Okay. But I mean, if there was, wouldn't that be huge news? Like, wouldn't you want to be the scientist behind that? Like, there was a global flood at one point on Earth, and it destroyed Pangea or something, like, wouldn't that be, they find so many things you wouldn't believe that how did they find that? And a global flood seems to be something so obvious that you could easily detect. Because it's everywhere. You can look everywhere.
You're probably going to hate this explanation, but I think it's because of, it's just how we interpret the evidence. We run it through our film.
Even the scientists aren't all atheists. There's a bunch of Christians, there's a bunch of, all different faiths are scientists, and they all come to the same conclusion that the consensus, most of them come to the consensus conclusion,
You take like, take just a fossil, for your example. You take a fossil, and when you run it through someone who takes the Bible literally, like myself's viewpoint, you see evidence of the flood. When you run it through someone's viewpoint who maybe takes the Bible more metaphorically and, feels more compelled to agree with the scientific community, then they see millions of years and slow processes.
Mm-hmm. But one side has, the scientific community, which agrees unanimously all over the world. All over the world, scientists are coming to the same conclusion. And then you have a small group of Christians, because it's not all Christians who subscribe to the young Earth thing, who go, well, okay, I'm going to take this literally.
Appeal to authority is only so much as you want to take it. But I would say...
I'm sorry, what?
It's kind of... That's almost an appeal to authority fallacy right there.
I don't want to, that doesn't obviously prove it, but that's sort of what we're up against here, so which one should I accept, personally? Which one should I accept? Because people can accept both.
You're right. My main point, after all that said, you're right, people can accept either, is that it's still faith-based. Either way, people like to side with the scientific community because they think they're taking the faith element out of it, because they don't want to, I don't want to live by faith, I want to live by... they're not taking the faith element out at all.
But, like, so your thing is, how can they know that the Earth didn't change, because they don't have evidence of that, right? Like, how do they know the Earth remained a constant, or, whatever?
Yeah, there's obviously, because if someone watches this, I'm sure they're going to comment. There are different examples. I'm talking in general. They know about catastrophic events. They know about certain things that they've, uncovered, things like that. Yes. But for the general purposes, yeah, they believe, in slow, random processes because that's what we observe today. But if you take the Bible literally, there's no reason you wouldn't expect things to be running slow and gradual today either. So the overall point is that the one doesn't cancel out the other.
I don't think evolution cancels out the Bible, to be honest.
Well, it doesn't cancel out young Earth creation either.
Yeah, let's get into that because
that's really my only point I want to get across.
I honestly,
that's really it.
I honestly, well, I mean, see, I have no interest in making you not a Christian. That's the last thing I want to do. But young Earth creationism, that to me is its own religion. I've been on the Answers in Genesis, dozens of times. I have yet to see the word Jesus anywhere.
Oh yeah, it's all.
I've yet to see it.
If you saw the Ken Ham Bill Nye debate, I didn't hear Jesus once. I mean, they're all about the young Earth creationism, and to me, that totally misses the point.
Well, I'll tell you what, I've been in their museum many times, and the main focus is Jesus. It's all over the place, and they have a big theater at the end.
They got kids riding dinosaurs all over the place. Like you said before you were young Earth creationists, you were just the four Gospels, right? That was your thing. I think that is where you should have stayed. That to me that's the whole point.
It is the whole point. You're right. It's not a salvation issue either way. It really isn't. To me, it's a consistent worldview position. There's no reason Jesus needed to come to save us if the events of the beginning of Genesis didn't occur.
Yeah. Well,
no, there's no reason.
I mean, it could be, metaphorically. I'm sorry, my kid is doing something. It could be, I mean, I can get into that, like the whole, like it could just be a huge metaphor, but, basically, if you want to create atheists, you preach young Earth creationism. That's what I think, because people respect the science, okay? They're gonna respect, I mean, even if you're religious and you're young Earth creationists, you still technically respect the science because you're basically going, look, the Bible says this, this, and this, and look, science confirms it. So we're all kind of appealing to science at the end of the day. And I think if you want to create atheists, because you're basically tying the two, I mean, not necessarily you, but like Ken Ham is tying the two and basically like, someone as an external observer to both of these ideas are going to go, wait, in order for me to believe in God and to be a Christian, I have to think dinosaurs lived with us, and that makes people.
Well, I could understand that. I mean, I was a Christian for so many years before I pursued this. I think being a Christian is accepting the gospel 100%. I mean, that's it. I don't care what you believe about dinosaurs. I don't care what you believe about the flood. But as I grew in my Christianity, it's like it wasn't just a one-time decision and then I'm done. As I grew and I started to study it more and learn, I realized that, wait a second, this isn't adding up, this Old Testament to the New Testament connection. This doesn't make sense. I mean, to me, it was either, okay, all true or not true.
Okay. I mean, there's a whole, like the Garden of Eden, for instance, has a whole metaphor for, like, basically man's whole. I understand Ken Ham's logic. Like, why should we trust the Bible even if the first couple, Genesis is even literal? Why should we? I understand the logic of it, but the flood is just basically, man's, problem and God, salvation, that sort of. I mean, like, the meanings of the story, right? Like Garden of Eden is like that's basically man's rejection of God, and that's what happens. Sin comes into the world, and that sort of thing. That's sort of the meaning of it, and you don't really have to take it literally.
But, but what? How do you? What is your? If you don't take it literally, say you're a Christian, and you don't take it literally. What is your position on death?
Oh yeah, you're suggesting why is there death before the fall of man if there wasn't the apple, the whole thing? Why is there death? To me, it's just that would be regardless, basically when we're born, we're already, not following God. We're already screwing up. So either way, we kind of end up in that same, we already die, Basically, there's no inception of it. It's just the fact that we exist and we go against God.
Right, but then that same God that you're saying created us to die, calls death an enemy, and calls it and says, "I'm sending Christ to overcome death." He says death will be the last enemy destroyed. So I can't logically put the two together. He created death for us to go through, but then wanted to defeat it. Why did he do that?
Well, I don't. He put us. Oh, okay. To be honest, you would have to take that up with William Lane Craig. But that's why, if I was a Christian, I wouldn't even worry about that. I would be strict Jesus and everything else I don't care.
Yeah, but there's so many people leaving the church because they don't.
I think part of it.
They don't feel that we have the answers. They say, "Well, look, this doesn't add up." Just for the reason I gave, they see a loved one die something, and they say, "There's no God. This doesn't make sense." Why would I love this person for this many years and then they're just ripped from me and I'm all alone? Why does God allow all this suffering to happen? Because in their worldview, in this old earth or whatever you call it, worldview, God is the designer of death. He's the designer of suffering. We were born into a world full of death and suffering.
How does adding the Garden of Eden change that? Because he designed the apple and the tree and everything, so that would technically be designing a faulty.
But it was man's choice, not God's. If God created death and suffering for us, then bad God.
Who gave man the choice?
God gave man the choice. That is absolutely true. Yes, that's a good point. He gave man the choice, but in my worldview, it's man's fault, not God's. In my worldview, it's man's fault, not God's.
Okay, what would you say is more realistic? The gospel or the Garden of Eden story? What would you say is more realistic? Both stories.
That's difficult because there wouldn't be a need for the gospel without the Garden of Eden.
If you're just an external observer, you're going, okay, I have one story with a garden and then another story with a guy who just rose from the dead. I think honestly it would just be metaphorical, the whole thing.
50. Let me give you one of my points, and you can tell me if I'm wrong on this. I don't think I am, but 50, 60 years ago, there was Bible teaching and prayers and all that stuff in schools. People grew up with it everywhere, right? We're more of a secular society, is what I'm getting at, right? We're more of a secular society. That stuff's not around us all the time unless your parents, take you there, right? Creation was in schools now, and then evolution teaching became more and more. So what I'm getting at is just over the last probably 50, 60 years, we've become more of a secular society, right?
Well, the whole country is founded on secular ideas.
Well, I don't want to talk about that, but I definitely don't agree with that.
Well, it's not like there is no God. It's just religion is out of the equation. Basically, that's your own personal thing. But when it comes to public school, everything, government, system. Well, no, that's how it's supposed to be. That's the First Amendment. Freedom of religion. So.
Big topic. Okay. But 50, 60 years ago, it was different. Right. There was all this teaching. People knew about creation, Adam and Eve, the fall, the flood, things like that. They were taught it growing up. Everybody went to church. It was taboo if you didn't. Nowadays it's the other way. It's practically opposite way around. Now, in the New Testament, Paul is normally considered a better evangelist than Peter because he reached more people for Christ. And the difference here is that Paul was preaching to mainly a Jewish crowd. Now, the Jewish crowd had kind of the foundational elements. They had creation. They knew about the fall, the flood, all this stuff. They knew about their creator. And so when he just presented the gospel to them, it was sufficient. And they took it and they accepted it and they became Christians. Peter, on the other hand, he mostly witnessed to like the Greeks, these sorts of things, so the Greek societies, and they didn't have any background in creation or the fall or the flood or all these historical things. They didn't have any background in that, so he had to start from the beginning, and it was a harder road to convert them because he had to take them all the way through everything. He wasn't just able to present the gospel. So nowadays, when we're still practicing the old evangelical evangelism model, which is just present the gospel. And it's not working. Why is it not working? Because people don't have the foundation that they had 50, 60 years ago. That's why creation's important.
But what about 100 years ago? Was it like that? Was prayer in school 100 years ago?
Well, if it was 50, 60 years ago, I'm assuming so.
Because in Jefferson's day, in around the time of making the Declaration of Independence and stuff, that was not a very religious society. That was get away from the monarchy in England, and that was form our own society. A lot of the founding fathers were Christians, but some of them were deists, meaning they just believe in God and that's it. And religion was sort of like this. That's
the first Bible printed in America was printed for use in the public schools. The first Bible printed in America was for use in the public schools.
When was that?
I don't know the date anymore, but I've seen that.
Yeah, but I mean, all that shows is that religion getting into the society, and getting into the government sort of thing, and that's not what America is supposed to be like. That's what they were getting away from with the monarchy.
I don't want to talk too much about, separation of church and state and stuff like that, because I think that's a huge other topic.
Well, would you want the Bible to be
I'm not advocating for that either. I'm just trying to show why creation, the fall, the flood, things like that, why I think that's important, why we don't want to abandon that. If we abandon it, people might accept Christ based on just the gospel, and they do, but a lot of them fall away from it because they don't have the full answers.
I think it's because people are they accept the science. So before you even begin talking to them, if you start saying the earth is 6,000 years old, you've lost them already, I think Jesus, the way Jesus converted people was just, he didn't even go around and, he didn't necessarily even say follow me. Just the way he was, the way he acted, people just wanted to be like him. That sort of thing. He never go, hey, did you know the earth is 4,000 years old? He didn't, or maybe he didn't need to because they already thought that. But I think the whole 6,000-year-old model is kind of a new thing, though. I think that's sort of a new idea. That's to me, it's like a new religion.
No, it was James Ussher that calculated the dates the first time, I think. I can't remember when that was, 1400s or something like that? I think. I'm not sure offhand. But he's one of the first ones that calculated out the dates. I don't think it's not a new thing. But I know what I know what you're saying. I'm just saying we're not the Jewish society more like we were 50, 60 years ago. Presenting just the gospel was fine then. People took it because they understood why they needed a savior. If you don't tell them the bad news, the good news doesn't make sense. And that's what I think of with creationism. I think, here's the bad news. Here's what happened.
But I would say a lot of those people in the 50s were Catholic. That was like Catholics. That wasn't to me, the Christian thing is a very, sort of unique version, To me, I see Roman Catholic as the 50s thing. That's what most people were. So that technically they weren't even getting the full story, you know. They had confession, they had saints, they had, you know, Mary is like, you know, a divine being and all this, you know.
Okay. So.
I mean, that's just sort of like a point in history. That's not like everything used to be good and now 50 years went by and then poof, everything just went secular, you know. It's not like in the year 1500 it was super, you know, this way or that way. I don't know.
Well, in the 60s, I can't remember it's like between 60 and 64, teaching of evolution in the textbooks went up like 1,000% or something like that in 1960s. That's something.
Well, I mean, to me, like, I don't know if I said this, but like, to me, evolution, God, Christianity, none of those are connected to each other. None of them have to do with anything with each other. I don't think, you know, either of them are connected.
Well, all you gotta do is get on, like, atheist blogs or on Reddit on their atheist page and stuff like that, and you'll find right away that...
Well, see, to me, though, that's...
the reason.
How do I mean, a lot of those people probably just recently deconverted, to be honest. But when people like Ken Ham, they mix the two, right? You know, it's creationism versus evolution. People get this idea that, oh, you know, this is what it is to be this and this is what it is to be that, and it's not really the case. You know, so, this whole evolution versus creationism thing, it's in the mind of, you know, people like Ken Ham, you know, to me. It's yeah. I mean, I don't want to suggest like you, I don't, you know, when you mix the two, you're going to get bad results. I think that's creating
someone like Ken Ham or myself. We're just not willing to accept. We're not willing to live an inconsistent position. And I said this before. I think young Earth creationism and well, I kind of thought before that atheism were the only consistent positions. Theistic evolution just falls apart among itself.
Well, I mean, look. I mean, that's already assuming that, like the Garden of Eden, you know, people die because of X or whatever. Maybe just people die. I don't know. You know, that's just how we're not eternal in our human form.
Which makes God the author of death and suffering.
Yeah.
That's the problem.
What was I gonna say? Oh, I mean, like, we have, if I were to say to you, how does rain come about, right? Like, does God make the rain? Okay. And then you would go, yeah, but he uses the water cycle, right? Okay. So, how does God design us in his own image? He did, and he uses evolution to do that. You know, it's just it's just a process, you know, to me. It's not like...
But what
it's
God?
Like gravity.
But what God? I mean, it's certainly not the God it's not the God written about in the Bible.
Well, I mean,
that's the problem. You can't,
that's the thing.
You can't accept Jesus because you read about it in the Bible, and then say, yeah, but God could have used evolution, but, you know, I read that in a science textbook. You're inconsistent.
Well, that's already assuming that the Bible is, like, literal, you know? That's I mean, the at least the Genesis part of it.
Why not?
You know,
I mean, you're assuming the parts about Jesus are literal.
Yeah.
What's different?
Well, I mean, Jesus to me is not like an allegory. It's maybe an allegory or metaphor. I mean, you got people who are talking and characters. The Garden of Eden story is a little vaguer. It's a little more vague.
Yeah, I mean, the thing about Genesis that we haven't really talked too much about, we probably should wrap it up pretty soon. But the main thing is, it does describe the world we live in. Okay? Trying to think of where I want to go with this, because there's a few different ways I could go with it. You know, obviously in the beginning it says that, it says that people lived up to 900 years. Okay? And it says that, obviously close relatives could have married in the beginning. Well, how's that? Because, Adam and Eve had sons and daughters. Well, who'd they marry? Well, they they kind of went off with themselves. You know, we would call that incest.
Yeah. Yeah, see, I don't know how you make sense of that.
I'll tell you how to make sense of that. Because if God created us in the beginning in a perfect state, okay, and the reason we don't intermarry today because of the incest problem is because we were more likely to pass on the mutations, similar mutations, and cause birth defects.
But I mean, we're still all the same. We still all come from the same two people, though.
Yeah, but like those people had a perfect genetic code that caused them to live forever until it was altered, until there was something altered by the fall. Okay, so when that alteration happened, now they could still marry close, but as time went on, the mutations accumulated and accumulated and accumulated, and finally it was not a good idea for them to marry close together. And their lifespans decreased too.
So incest was the perfect standard?
Incest was well, it had to be, it had to happen to populate the world. That was God's command, was to populate the world. So yeah, it had to happen in the beginning.
But I mean, if there was no fall, incest would have been basically the norm.
No, because there would have been so many people, there would have been no reason to do that. I don't know.
No, like if Adam and Eve didn't sin and everything was just perfect forever, they would still be incest today. We'd be all in, in paradise having incest.
You could almost say that.
I can't say that. That's what.
But there would be nothing wrong with. Yeah, there'd be nothing wrong with incest if that was the case.
Oh, that's a little weird. Come on.
It's a little weird today because a lot has changed since then. Yeah.
Yeah, I know. I know the arguments. Everything eventually breaks down, and people are, I guess, getting smaller too and dumber. I guess.
Yeah, it's basically
it's the reverse of evolution. Evolution starts small to big, and then creationism is big to small. Basically.
Yeah, and we see that the evidence lines up with that.
Well, can you help? Do you have Google on right now, or can you not do that? Okay, can you look up the world according to the Hebrews on Google Images? It's called The World According to the Hebrews.
Okay.
Yeah, let me see if we got it. Yeah, do you have like there's basically a picture of like a Earth, and it's white. The picture's white and black. Yeah, basically that's sort of the view the Garden of Eden is mapping out. That's sort of the world it's making.
And what do you see wrong with it?
Well, it's flat, for one thing.
Not necessarily. It could just be a cut.
Yeah, or it's flat. Because they have, like, the water. Do you see the abyss of the waters? Basically, that's the water. The water goes off to, whatever.
Okay. I see what you're saying, yeah.
Yeah, anyways, the reason I know about that picture is because it's actually in my Bible that I have at home. It's literally in the Bible. That's the picture. And it's a King James version. Basically, that's sort of to me the view the Bible, the Garden of Eden sort of presents, and it's just kind of the way how they try to understand the world,
I don't think the Bible and science are at odds. I mean, I think we've learned things about the earth, and I think it's still consistent with everything we've read in the Bible. I don't see any contradiction between the two.
Yeah, I would say the same thing about evolution. I don't see a contradiction with evolution in the Bible, to be honest.
Yeah, it'd be quite a few.
Well, you're probably going to give me the every kind one. Everything produces after its kind, right?
That would be one. Your main thing is going to be I think is going to be your order of creation. It's not compatible with evolution. It's not compatible with the Big Bang. Even if you draw it out to millions or billions of years, it's not compatible. You can't have plants on day 3 and have millions of years go by and have the sun on day 4.
That's assuming, the Garden of Eden is literal, though. That's the thing.
Well, that's not the Garden of Eden. That's just the creation account.
Yeah. Well, no. I don't think evolution and creationism is compatible. But the Bible, Jesus existing, to me, evolution can coexist just fine,
But that Bible you just said is the one that says on day 3 the plants were made, and on day 4 the sun was made. How do you reconcile that?
And I did. I actually recently talked to a group of Christians who did not take that literally. Because the sun created on the 4th day. The sun is just another, one of the zillions of stars out there. Basically, he created the stars before he created the sun. That sort of thing.
But basically what they're saying is he created the stars before day 4, because they had to have been there for the plants to make it for millions of years. And, well then, the other thing is you got, what do you have? You have birds on day 5 before land animals on day 6. So how do your dinosaurs turn into birds?
I don't think evolution is consistent with the Garden of Eden account. I don't think it's consistent.
So as long as you wipe out Genesis probably 1 through 11, I think, then you can be a Christian and believe in evolution.
Yeah, they base, the people I was talking to, they start with, Noah's Ark.
Well, you can't have that either. You can't have Noah's Ark. You can't have the flood, because then the flood would wash away all your fossils. You gotta have your fossils for billions of years, or else you can't have a flood 4,300 years ago, wipe them all away.
Right.
Yeah, you gotta stop after the flood. And then, of course, you probably can't have the Tower of Babel either. You have to wipe that one out.
Yeah, to me, that's just, we look at different races, here's our story of explanation, This is how we explain it. It's not necessarily be taken literal,
Isn't it amazing? Amazing that there are all these races in the world, and the Bible just happened to cover how it happened?
How is that amazing?
They may not have even known at the time they wrote this about all these races.
Did they write down every race?
No, but they wrote down that these races were scattered among the world. My goodness, the things they knew ahead of time was amazing.
They just wrote there were different races. They had different races when they wrote that. There was the Greeks, there was the Jews. They had different kinds of races. They had different kinds of people. That's just basically the different. It's just the explanation.
If you take one thing, take Noah's flood and take it completely out of the Bible, creationism would fall apart. 100%. We could not explain the fossils, we couldn't explain the rock layers, we couldn't explain any of this stuff.
Wait, if I took away Noah's Ark?
We'd be done.
Okay, well, let me try that.
If it wasn't in the Bible is what I'm saying. If it was never there in the first place, we're done. The fact that it's there is incredible. They knew nothing about these fossils that would be found in the future. They knew nothing about these rock layers that would be used to show millions of years. What's that?
They mentioned fossils in the
No, I'm
Noah's Ark
saying
story?
The people that wrote Noah's Ark had no idea that thousands of years later we'd be talking about fossils and rock layers and evolution and all this stuff. They had no idea, yet they wrote the story of Noah's Ark, which makes sense of all those things.
What? That's like saying they didn't know that we would figure out how the universe came into being, and they wrote about God. That's just sort of that's sort of a self.
Creationists would have no answer to your the accusation of fossils and rock layers and all these things that are geologically old. We have no answer.
If it wasn't for Noah's Ark, okay.
We'd have no answer, but we have it.
The answer, you would just probably say, hey, when I die, I turn into bones and then I go underground. There's a fossil. You know?
But we know that's not how fossils are made. You know?
Well, let me ask you something. You're gonna have to help me out with this. This has been bouncing in my head for a long time. Are you familiar with, it's in, I think it's in Arizona. It's a tree, and it's called Big Tucujo or something? Big Tucujo or something like that. It's a... 9,000 years old. That's it, yep. Yeah, so how do you explain the 9,000-year-old tree if the world is 6,000 years old?
How do you explain the 9,000-year-old tree in a 6,000-year-old world, right? Well, the first thing is that it's not necessarily a 9,000-year-old tree. It's actually a conglomeration of trees, and I think the oldest one in that conglomeration is, I can't remember. It's somewhere between 4 and 5 or something like that, 1,000 years old. But then they use the roots, the interconnected roots, to come up to 9,000. But regardless, even if that wasn't an explanation, tree rings in and of themselves, I don't think prove age. I just think they prove rings. They prove seasonal cycles. So what if, following the flood, there was a massive geological change in the Earth, that had never occurred before the flood, and it changed the way that these things happened for several hundred years, like an ice age. And so, we've already documented that several rings can be formed in 1 year. We've already seen that. So I don't think tree rings proves anything.
But that's the tree though. It's the 9,000-year-old tree. That's what it's known for. It's not like, I don't think people are like confused or whether it's 9,000. I think they're pretty much on the this is a 9,000-year-old tree. Like, everybody's on board with that.
That's fine. I've heard arguments that it's actually a conglomeration of trees that adds up to 9,000. It's probably more complicated than that, but even if it were 9,000 just based on one tree and tree rings, I don't think that proves anything. You still have to believe in uniformitarianism of those tree rings.
Well, we're not going back millions of years. We're just going back 3,000 extra years, But when we find a tree, that's, its rings tell us how old it is. When we find any other tree, we find a 100-year-old tree. Yeah, so why is there this 9,000-year-old tree? How old would it be if it is a 9,000? 4,000, you said? Or?
Yeah, I don't think it would be any older than 4,300 years, yeah.
Well, because what people would generally say is that God made everything old. He made Adam old.
Oh, yes, I understand what you're saying. Yeah, that could be part of the answer. That's a hard explanation. I've used that myself, but that's a hard, things would have had some sort of sign of age when they were created, if they were created in 6 days, absolutely. You're right. But I don't think that's the answer here. I think the answer is, we judge the past based on how the world works today. The way the atmosphere works today, the way our seasonal cycles work today, we're judging the entire past based on what we've seen over the last, 1 to 200 years.
Well, not the entire past, because there's points where, the moon doesn't even exist, and, the Earth is forming and that.
Oh, yeah, but I'm talking about just taking these trees, for example. We don't know the seasonal changes 3,000 years ago. We know what they are today, and we're extrapolating.
But, we can only go by the evidence. There's no evidence to suggest that it was different, even from, I'm not even going into biblical, I'm just talking about...
What if there was a massive global flood that broke up all the continents and created all this friction and heated up the oceans and caused an ice age? What if that happened? Would that be a problem?
What do you mean, a problem?
A different geological condition that those trees might have been under?
I don't know. I think to be honest, how long do you think it took the Grand Canyon to be formed in? Do you subscribe to the 5-minute answer?
Oh, no, not 5 minutes, no. I think it's a combination of, the floodwaters rising, but also the floodwaters, going down, which probably took, I don't even know, decades or hundreds of years, even possibly.
Uh-huh. Well, because to me, if there was a global flood, I mean, the whole point of a global flood was to wipe out everything. The trees, the plants, the animals, everything. It was supposed to basically create a flat plain, just flatten everything out, except for mountains, of course, but that's the whole point of the flood, right?
I don't think so. I think it was just to take the breath of life out of anything. I mean...
That would be plant life, though, also.
It never says anything about plants, so I wouldn't go there with it, but... They certainly would have been affected.
I mean, I'm assuming if there was a global flood, all the trees would be knocked down.
Most. Yeah, I would say, yeah.
Yeah. So, but I mean, that's the thing, though. When I find a tree that's 9,000 years old, I'm going, why didn't the flood that thing? Why didn't the flood ruin that?
Well, then you have to check your assumption about the age of it. Why are you saying 9,000 years old? Is there something that might have happened in those thousands of
because
years
of the rings
that sped up those tree rings?
That's not no one's debating the Earth is 9,000 years old. Everybody agrees on that one. That's not a debate. That's the tree. That's what it's known for. I mean, the normal creationist answer would be that Adam and Eve would look like they were 20, but they were created 15 minutes ago. That would be basically the answer.
That could be part of it. That tree might have been created. Well, it wouldn't have been created though. It would have grown after the flood. So I don't know if that applies there. So you have to have a different explanation for that tree. But rocks and things like that, it applies to those. Because that tree would have formed after the flood, more than likely. Unless for some reason it withstood it, but
I think it was there before it, to be honest. I think it's been there. I mean, 9,000 years, there's a lot of room for mistake. It could be really 8,000 or 7,000. There's a lot of, to bring it down to 4,000 is kind of convenient, to sort of get around the flood issue.
Well, I think people don't take the flood issue into account when they think about this stuff. What would the flood have done to the environment? Because it's the environment, it's the seasonal changes that create those tree rings. If the world drastically changed at the flood time, and then it's kind of, well, let's just say it's cooled off since then, okay? So it was turbulent, it was wild, it was crazy after the flood. Things were just unbelievable after the flood. And it's cooled down since then. So maybe now we have a uniform way that tree rings are made, right? So they're formed, one a year or whatever it is, 2 a year or whatever. And so we know how to count them now. But we don't know what it was like after the flood. We don't know what the atmospheric and the seasonal conditions were like after the flood. Who knows if 100 rings were made in a year?
Evidence. We only go by if there's evidence that trees didn't form this way or whatever. And I think either if the tree was there before the flood or was after the flood, you still have a problem. Because, if it was there before the flood, why is it still here? I think the global flood would have wiped that thing out just like every other tree.
I think so too.
And if it was after, it made rings form, rings would form weird, right?
They might have formed rapidly after the flood, who knows?
Yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. If there was a global flood, it would mess with the rings, but that would be a pretty huge, how did that ring spin a zillion times? Because it gained a couple thousand years,
Yeah, who knows, maybe, I don't know, I can't do the math off the top of my head, but, for the first year or two, or 10 or 20 or 30 after the flood, who knows if hundreds of rings were formed a year? We don't know. All we know is that one is formed a year now. That's all we know.
But how do you distinguish? That's, don't you think scientists have good reasons to think that the Earth is more than 6,000 years old just based on that tree? If
they believe in their uniformitarianism, yes.
You don't even have to go, it's a billion years. You can just go, it's at least 9,000 years based on just that tree. There's good reason. And I'm sure there's other trees.
But I've already given explanations. Again, if that flood story wasn't in the Bible, man, we're screwed. But it's there.
I don't think you are. I don't
Our whole position is screwed. I couldn't have answered your tree question without that.
Yeah, you could.
Maybe with the
Earth is it's just an old Earth. It's just an old Earth. That's it.
But I can answer your tree. But the thing is, I can answer your tree question, and I did answer it. It doesn't mean it's... I mean, we can't prove it. We can't prove this historical stuff that we can't go back and observe. We just can't prove it either.
Well, the tree... I mean, the tree is 9,000 years old, though. You know, like, the rings...
I'm saying it's 4,300 years old, and for several decades, more than likely, rings formed quicker.
Okay, how about this? How do you know that... Let's say I go in my backyard and I have a tree that's 5 years old, and the rings are five rings, okay? How do I know that that tree is actually 5 years old?
How do you... Well, we've studied tree rings for how many years now? We have written records of the seasonal changes for 100, 200 years. I don't know what we have. So we have stuff to corroborate with that. We would have, corroborate those tree rings with. So that would make sense. You could do that. But when you're talking thousands of years ago, we don't have any data from then. We don't know.
I'm sure that's not the only 9,000-year-old tree. I'm sure there's maybe a 6,000-year-old tree, a 7,000-year-old tree.
That's fine. Same logic applies. Same logic applies though to those trees. It doesn't make a difference.
But I mean, it's like, do you understand why people think the Earth is older than 6,000 years old?
I totally understand why people think that. Doesn't mean we don't have answers.
You keep finding these trees that have more than 6,000 years, you keep finding these things, and we're going, why do you assume the Earth was the same way? And I don't see why, 10,000 years ago isn't that much different to assume the Earth was basically the same way it is now. 10,000 years is not that long in terms of, a geological scale.
Unless a major catastrophic event the world over occurred 4,300 years ago that we've never been able to witness and see what it would do to the world. We're just assuming that those trees.
But you would think there would be every scientist would be finding that evidence all over the Earth because it's a global flood.
All the geological evidence you find in any geology textbook, okay, secular, I don't care. Pick up a geology textbook. Anything in there, I can tell you what the flood had to do with that. It's just that they don't interpret it as the flood.
I could go, the reason why there's fossils is because there was a global burning. Okay. That would explain the fossils too. But I don't have any evidence for that. I don't have... Just because I can explain it, that doesn't mean it's true.
You can claim anything off the top of my head. I mean, if I was claiming a worldwide flood off the top of my head and had nothing to back it up, I would hope you'd call me out on it. But if I have a 4,000-year-old document...
more than just saying it, obviously, but...
I mean, I have a 4,000-year-old document that's been scrutinized over and over and over for thousands of years, and is still around. For some reason, it's still around.
The Enlightenment wasn't too long ago. The Enlightenment's only a couple hundred years ago. That's when people got scrutinizing. That's when people said, okay, we're doing evidence now. We're doing science. This is how we're going to run things. For the most of it, people... most of human history, people did not go, I believe in Noah's Ark because here's the proof, no one had the proof. People just believed it.
Yeah, and now we have the proof. It's awesome.
Well, I don't want to mean to appeal to numbers here, but don't you find it curious that, the scientific community is not coming up with that? It has nothing to do with the worldview, because there are Christians who totally believe,
Science is the study of the natural world. They can't invoke God in their studies. They can't.
It has nothing to do with that. But when it comes to, making claims that the Earth is 6,000 years old, they can definitely tackle that one. They can definitely get on that one.
Right, and I understand why they come to their numbers. Makes sense.
Well, it probably makes sense because it is, in fact, fact. It's the truth. That's why.
No, because they believe that what they've measured for the last, say, 100 years, they can use that to judge the entire past.
Well, there's multiple ways they figure out the age of the Earth, right? They don't just use, one... they use multiple things, and they all come to the same conclusion. They use starlight, they They use geology. They use a number of things, you know.
And we would expect that they would all come to the same conclusion because they're all using the same assumption.
No, come on. That's,
they're all using uniformitarianism.
Because if it's not true, right? If it's not true, like, let's just assume it's not true. Why are they coming to the same conclusion? Like, what, like they're assuming the same thing, hypothetically, but, like, the evidence is still pointing.
They've never observed the millions of years. They've never observed any of this, okay?
But no one's observed a dinosaur die. How do they know dinosaurs died?
They've never observed any of this thing, so what they're doing is they're taking the stuff they have observed for the last 100 to 200 years, and they're saying, okay, this is the rate at which this occurs. Okay, we know it's the rate it occurs. It never changes. But there's where they went wrong. They said it never changes. How do they know?
Well, it depends on whatever they're talking about, because that's not necessarily true. I mean, the whole planet's formation is nothing but change. It's constantly changing, just incredibly, slow rate.
I know there's examples that are different, because, I said that before. I know there's examples that are different. But for the main point, the reason they all come to the same conclusion is because they have agreed that extrapolation, basically, is your principle. Look at the way it forms today, and that's the way it's always formed.
I think it's a lot more complicated than that. I think it's light years more complicated than that. I mean,
that is how you could boil it down, though. That's the basic, you boil it down to
that's maybe like for like a couple thousand years at best. The Earth changes way too much. If you're going to talk about billions of years, you have to have an incredible model to form that idea. You can't just go, oh, it's just the same here and here and here. You can't, no scientist would say, oh, the Earth has always looked like this. Like, it's not like that,
Right. No, I know it's a little more complicated than I'm making it, but it's the same principle. It's like, take radiometric dating. Okay, we know that it decays at a certain rate. We know it. It's set. It doesn't change. We've never observed it change. Let's put it that way.
And that's why we accept that.
Yeah, that's why we accept it. So then we take that and we extrapolate out to find the date of the rock or whatever it is. But it's still extrapolation. It's still saying that rate has never changed. Well, how do you know that the flood didn't have some effect on that rate? How do you know that the fall didn't have some effect on that rate? How do you know that rate?
That's assuming there is, no one's going, hey, if creationism is true, it can't. I mean, if it is true, it is true. Basically, no one finds evidence of a global flood. That's the thing.
All the evidence in the geology textbooks is evidence for a global flood.
No, that's assuming.
They're just saying it happened over. They're saying it happened over millions and millions of years. We're saying it happened over one main year and then the decades following. We're saying it happened quickly. They're saying it happened slowly. That's the only difference.
But that's starting with the answer before coming to the conclusion. Like, if I believed in Star Wars, okay, and on Tatooine, Luke's got that planet with two suns, right? Well, scientists actually have recently discovered a couple planets that are actually like that. They have two suns. Hey, look, Star Wars is true.
Yep.
That's sort of the same idea. You already presume the answer, and then you go, look, these things confirm what I already know. Science works the other way around. It actually really does. Honestly, you would be scrutinized. If you were assuming things before evidence in science, you would be scrutinized. You'd be laughed out of the room. It's embarrassing.
Here's an example of what you just said towards, my position, but in the scientific world. Okay, so they found dinosaurs with soft tissue in them still. And now the creationists jumped all over it. Because they said, hey, look, there's soft tissue cannot last for that long. We know that it decays, rapidly, actually, and at best, maybe 100,000 years. And so they found things from 65 million years old. So our thing is, hey, look, these things didn't die off as long ago as thought. And I said, well, no, we'll just find the mechanism, that did it. And then a couple years later, they came out with a study that says, hey, look, iron. We found that there's iron in there, and iron has preserved it for longer. Well, that's great, but what they didn't mention in those articles is the iron only made it last for, I think, 240 times as long as the normal process, which is nowhere near what they needed. Nowhere near what they needed to get to 65 million years. And now they found soft tissue in something 550 million years old. And it's just phenomenal, but do they change their position? Nope.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. You have all this evidence that points to 65 million years. You have all these things. If you find one thing that contradicts it, you're not just then, okay, we're going to have to throw out all the other stuff. Basically, we have maybe that thing wasn't even, assessed correctly or whatever. Maybe that wasn't actually measured correctly. Maybe that's not even from the dinosaur. Maybe that's, there's better reason than to think, oh, we're wrong about everything else.
Oh, I know. You're not just going to throw everything out, but it is kind of, it is kind of confirmation bias in a sense, though. We already know it's 550 million years old, so we're not going to look at anything that might suggest otherwise.
No, I mean, they obviously would investigate that. That's a totally amazing mystery to investigate. Based on your story, that's something to investigate, and they jump all over that. It's not just like, oh, this can't be true because of that. It's just, okay, let's not jump to conclusions here. We have all this evidence that convicts Jeffrey Dahmer of the murderer, but this guy over here says he didn't do it. This one guy. So maybe we should listen to that one guy versus all the evidence. It's you don't just drop all your luggage because something else. Just that one thing that maybe contradicts it, Yeah. That's all I'm saying. It's not like, I'm just trying to say they're not trying to be biased. The last thing scientists want to do is be biased. The last thing they want to do is to be wrong. They don't want to be wrong.
Okay. Alright, well, is there anything else we didn't cover or anything else that was kind of left?
I have one more question for you, but, yeah, I would definitely want to do this again and save it for another time if I had anything. Maybe we could talk morality or something if we do this again.
Okay. Well, I mean, yeah, we can talk anything. I'll tell you, my focus is definitely creation, evolution, and the age of the Earth and things like that for sure.
You're not not really philosophy.
Yeah, not so much.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so my only, just come back to my only point I've ever had whenever I've talked with atheists or agnostics or anything like that is that the overwhelming evidence for evolution doesn't cancel out young Earth creationism. It doesn't cancel it out because it doesn't take into account what we've said at all. It just ignores it and says, yeah, but here's what the truth is.
But it also doesn't count out Star Wars either. Evolution doesn't count. Because it has nothing to do with that. It's just, ultimately, if someone's making the claim, they have to prove it. You're making the claim that the Earth is successful, you have to prove it. Our evidence doesn't have to disprove it, because it isn't, we're not in the business of that,
Well, and I've given several things today. I mean, I don't think there's any way to prove anything about that ancient of a past. I mean, I think that's a fallacy right there. You can't just do it. You can't do it at all.
Well, we can't know 100% for sure this is how it went, but based on the evidence, this is the kind of model we have made. Based on the evidence, this is the kind of model we have made. And so far, every single science has lined up with it and confirmed it. Not just evolution. It's not interpretation. It's not like a Bible passage. We're not. I mean, this is science. I mean, the last thing you do with science is get whatever you kind of think about something. You go based on the evidence. That's what it's all about.
No, I know. Naturally speaking, when you take naturalism and you take uniformitarianism, the conclusions are valid. I've never said they're not valid. I'm just saying maybe they're not true.
But if you're gonna say the Earth would have been different or something, you gotta provide evidence for that. Ultimately. That's what it is. No, I understand your point, but you ultimately have to provide evidence for it.
Oh. Which I've said, because The same thing with the geology, with the Grand Canyon and all those things, the rock layers. Anything that they've said is evidence for long times, and I've said is evidence for short time. It's just reinterpreted. You interpret it through how you think about the world. I think about the world through supernaturalism and through catastrophism. You think of the world through more naturalistic assumptions and through more uniformitarian assumptions. We both have two assumptions about the world that we can't prove. You can't prove those two, and I can't prove my two. The only one we can both agree on is natural selection. It's observable. We've seen it. We've seen it in action. We both know about it.
Yeah, but I mean, if both of them are not in equal terms, though, because I could believe in Star Wars, and I go, well, they just interpreted that there weren't aliens, and I interpret that Egypt was Tatooine, and they see pyramids. Well, that's just their interpretation, So we have two different worldviews here. We have the Star Wars worldview, which Tatooine was in Egypt. There's no evidence for it there, but it was there. And then you have the scientists who say, no, Egypt was just Egypt and there's no aliens. They're not the same thing.
What you keep saying is that there's no evidence for my position.
Well, see, if I don't want to, how do I put it? Like, if I say that you're going to give me something, then I would just give you something the scientists say. And then we're just going to go back and forth. We're just going to go back and forth with that. But ultimately, people who fully accept Jesus Christ agree with me. There's a lot of people, young Earth creation is sort of a subsect of Christianity. It's a small sect.
Well, I don't know if that's exactly true. The latest Gallup poll.
It's probably growing, unfortunately, but to me, it's a new thing. It's not the majority of Christianity. It's not.
Yeah, but if the Gallup poll said 46% believe the Earth is 10,000 years old or less.
Is that Americans?
Right.
Yeah.
If 46% say that, I don't think that's a small subset.
Well, no, I think it might be, I know where you're getting your numbers. It might be the 46s that God, I don't know, like God did evolution or something like that. I don't know. No, I know the numbers are high though. I know the numbers are high in America. But then again, we're not exactly the most educated country. So, I mean, there's that.
So you're just saying that, they're both assumptions, but one's not.
No, I'm not saying that. They're both not on the same level, and science has the fewest assumptions. If you want the fewest assumptions anywhere, you go to science. Those are not assumptions. People don't just assume stuff. Like, this isn't like trying to figure out history. Like, this is based on the evidence. That sort of thing.
As long as you agree with naturalism and uniformitarianism.
I'm sorry?
As long as you accept naturalism and uniformitarianism.
It's not like you're accepting those. What's the, that's the default position. That's accepting the sun is hot. That's the default position. There's no...
But that doesn't make it true. It's valid.
No, I'm not saying that, therefore, that rules out supernaturalism. I'm just saying the reason why we assume that is because that's the default position. There's no alternative. I mean, I'm not saying there's no alternative. I mean, how do I put this? It's like the default position. I assume I'm a male. It's like, that's where you start from. You start from, you don't know anything, let's figure it out. The universe exists, let's figure it out. That's where you start from.
But maybe just assuming that science is the only way we find that out is faulty to start with.
Well, that's the thing. If you have an alternate method that isn't the scientific method, I would love to hear it. That so far science has proved itself over and over. The fact that we're talking to each other, science has proved itself over and over again. So far it's our best method.
And I haven't mentioned it, and I'm trying to wrap up, but it's funny. Whenever you talk about this topic, more and more things tend to come up, and we haven't talked about it yet. And I know Ken Ham talked about it a lot in debate, so we both saw it. Is this distinction between observational science and historical science?
Yeah, and that was a faulty twisting of, That's his own way of twisting his words right there. That's twisting what is true, basically.
Well, I mean, it's not that hard to understand. I mean, we definitely don't observe dinosaurs dying, so we are making assumptions. You know, we did not see that fossil get buried. We didn't see any of it. We simply just did not observe it. It's not observable. It's not repeatable.
Yeah, but that's how we convict murderers. You know, no one saw the crime happen. No one saw the murderer kill him, but based on the evidence, this suggests that guy did it. That's how we work.
What if the evidence in that criminal case suggests one thing, and then we find that an eyewitness comes forth, and their testimony doesn't contradict the evidence, but it makes us look at the evidence differently. And we say, oh, we didn't see that before.
Eyewitness testimony is horrible. That's like one of the worst ways to. That's like one of the worst ways to determine facts about a case.
Yes, but but I'm saying you of course you would dismiss the eyewitness testimony if it contradicted the conclusion, the evidence you had. But if their eyewitness testimony came along and just made you look at the evidence
and
see it differently, it would corroborate the evidence.
But that wouldn't, I mean, that ultimately it is the evidence, you know? Ultimately it is the evidence, you know? I mean, give me the example of like an eyewitness testimony. Like what do you, like, give me an example. Like, you get an eyewitness testimony, they agree with the evidence, but, you know, I know your analogy.
They give one more detail that you didn't know about that kind of flips the whole meaning of the evidence around. But let me give you a better example, because this is my classic example when it comes to historical observational science. Okay. You're going to write a book about the Civil War. Okay? You're going to go write a book about the Civil War. We don't know, let's just say we don't know anything about it. You're starting from scratch. So you go to a battlefield, and you look at the rocks and the bones in the ground. What are the conclusions you're going to come up about the Civil War? You're going to write something about what happened there. Do you think your story is going to be complete? Do you think you're going to have the full picture?
No, history is not an exact science. History is not.
Okay, this is the example. I mean, as historical science is what we're claiming. We're claiming that this is historical science. You're going and looking at the rocks and the bones, and you're coming up with a story that's valid. It makes sense given your rocks and your bones that you looked at. We're looking at the rocks and the bones, and then we're looking at the eyewitness testimony, and we're adding it to it and coming up with a different story.
But how do you know the eyewitness testimony is reliable?
That's a good question.
Ultimately, you have to go by the evidence either way. You know, if I go on the battlefield, okay, and I find that there was a battle here, and I got an eyewitness testimony from a guy from the South, who wrote during that time, and he goes, yeah, there was no battlefield, you know, or the South won, or something like that. I'm gonna go by what the evidence tells me before I'm gonna trust that guy, you know. And if his testimony lines up with the evidence, then okay, great.
So you're only going to accept his testimony if it lines up with your conclusions about the evidence.
It's not my conclusion, though. The evidence is that there was a battle there, this North won, etc.
You didn't add your personal interpretation into that evidence at all.
No.
You sure?
I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
Give me an example. Give me something.
Well, no, that's really my only example there. I think you added your own interpretation onto those rocks and those bones, and I think that they were reinterpreted by the eyewitness testimony.
Okay, how about this? This would be a better example. Basically, you would say there's a global flood. Okay. So the analogy would be, you would say there was a battle here. I go to that field, and I don't find any evidence of a battle. But you would still want me to accept that, and if I don't accept it, well, that's just my interpretation of it. You know, it was an invisible battle, it was a ghost battle, or whatever.
But there would be evidence there. Maybe I didn't follow you, but there would be evidence there.
Well, I mean, scientific community-wise, there is no evidence for a global flood. Basically.
It's all the evidence that's in the books. It's all of it. Polarized caps, plate tectonics.
That's like the Bible says, there's a sun and the moon, and hey, look, you look outside, there's a sun and the moon. You know, that's just like confirmation. That's like just already what you know, basically. No, I know the fossils, right? The fossils that would say a global flood.
Yeah, everything we keep finding in science keeps aligning with it if it looked at through the Bible first. When we found out about plate tectonics, well, that makes sense. The fountains of the great deep burst forth, broke apart the continents. That makes sense.
The fountain?
Maybe you're not aware. In the Noah story, it's not just rain from above. It's water from below.
Yeah, okay. That's well, that's kind of like with that picture I showed you. With the Hebrews, you know. That's sort of that, picture. But, wait, so where did the water come from then? It came from the middle, it came from the center of the earth?
There was water, because according to the Bible, the earth was made out of water. So there was, there was still water in the earth and above it. So it would have been both is where it came from. But, I mean, the other thing is just, polar ice caps. The Ice Age, all these things we would expect if there was a global flood. We would expect those things. You know that scientists agree that there was a global flood on Mars where there's not a drop of water?
That's not necessarily true.
And the Earth is...
What?
The Earth is 2/3 water, and they don't think this planet was ever flooded. That's amazing.
Wouldn't that be like one of the most amazing things to discover? And the whole Mars thing, like, I'm sure you're getting that information from Answers in Genesis, from getting like a website like that. Doesn't mean it's true.
Okay, I'll give you that one.
Yeah, like a global flood on Mars. Wouldn't they be like, where did the water go? Like, why would there be a global flood on Mars? You know, there's so many questions to arise from that. You know.
Well, what they would probably say is that it probably, dissipated, went out into the universe, and came in here and caused our oceans. They don't know where the water came from here either.
Well, we know how water is formed. You get hydrogen and it's H2O. You get air and hydrogen or something like that, and that forms water. You get those two components and they form water.
The things that are in the geology textbooks is what I was talking about, though. The Ice Age, in fact, the polar ice caps, plate tectonics, fossils even. Oh my goodness. There's a
Here, let me give you an example to that. So you're saying, fossils, like, this is what we would expect if there was a global flood, right? Okay, so if I was a Mormon, alright, and if you know, one of the beliefs in Mormonism is that when you die, you get your own planet. Do you know that belief? Yeah. So, if I was a Mormon, you would expect to find a bunch of planets. Because we're all gonna get planets, right? So doesn't that confirm Mormonism? By that logic.
Right.
Yeah. I was actually talking to two Mormons 2 weeks ago, these two girls, and I told them that basically scientists recently discovered that there were 700 planets just in our galaxy, and there's estimated about 50 billion in our galaxy, just in our galaxy. Yeah, if you're a Mormon, that just confirms what you already believe right there, based on that logic.
But it doesn't disconfirm a biblical.
No. Well, I don't know, but I'm just saying by that logic, if the fossils are going to confirm the flood, then by that logic, the multiple planets should confirm Mormonism.
Same logic. Yep, that's true.
Yeah.
So it's basically what you already think, because there's really, there's never going to be a disconfirm, like either we're going to find Jesus' grave or we're not going to find his grave. We're not going to find something that says, no, there is no grave here, If something isn't there, we're not going to find it. And if something is there, we're going to find it.
And of course, not to get off topic, but it wouldn't matter if we found it anyways.
Yeah, that wouldn't prove it. But, that actually was what I was going to ask you. Why do you think there's so many planets? What's the point of that?
Because God's a creator?
Yeah, but what's, I get that, but what's, like, why so many planets?
I don't know. The Bible, I believe, is the history book of our planet. It doesn't mean that cancels out that there's other stuff out there. I don't think that cancels that out.
Yeah, but I mean, like, what are they? I mean, when the world ends and Revelation happens and we new heaven and new earth, do we all get to go to other planets, or do we just hang out here?
Who knows? I don't know.
Kind of. I mean, I'm thinking I should be a Mormon, to be honest. I mean, I think that makes a lot more sense.
Then you don't have. Well, technically, the Mormons don't take a position on creationism.
Yeah.
But,
no, I know.
Yeah. Now you got your own inconsistencies there too, but it's.
Oh no, I'm just teasing. I'm just teasing right there. But yeah. Anyway.
So I mean, in the end, I mean, you're talking about the fossils, and you're talking about I'm talking about plate tectonics and stuff like that. What I'm getting to in the end is that it's interpretation. How do you interpret? It's not just the evidence, because the evidence itself doesn't say anything. The rocks.
Yeah, I've heard that one. But I mean,
the bones don't say anything. The trees don't say anything. None of them say anything. Scientists say stuff about.
I mean, like the tree ring thing. You find a tree with 9,000 years old. The tree's not saying anything. It's just 9,000 years old. Is it wrong for me to interpret that as 9,000?
The tree's not 9,000 years old. The scientist is saying the tree is 9,000 years old, and here is his logic for coming to that. Then you can agree with that, or you can dispute it. Like I did.
Don't you understand the logic?
The tree is just a tree.
100-year-old.
So no, the evidence itself doesn't prove it either way. The evidence is just the tree. Then the scientist says that tree's 9,000 years old, and you believe it or you don't.
Based on the rings.
Based on their interpretation of how rings work.
Based on we have, if I gave you 1,000 trees, okay, wouldn't you agree we're going to accurately get their age right? If I give you 1,000 trees, we're going to get their age right based on their rings. It's not like this is the only tree ever that we've measured rings. We've done this a zillion times.
Right, but the same concept applies. You're judging the past based on the present. The way tree rings form today, you're judging the past on that. I can't confirm that. How can you do that?
There's no evidence to suggest that actually trees do form faster or slower, etc. We only can go by, like I said, the evidence. We can't go by on the maybe disevidence. If there is evidence that trees in fact can, every tree we find, it doesn't work like that.
I know we can't prove it because it's historical. We can't prove historical science one way or the other, I don't believe.
I mean, this isn't a historical. We're just looking at tree rings. We're not trying to figure out what happened in history.
If you didn't see those tree rings form, it's stepping into history though. It's stepping into stuff you haven't seen.
Okay, well let me apply Occam's razor to it, right? I got 1,000 trees over here. They all got 100 rings and they're all 100 years old. And I got a couple over here that are 200 years old. I got some over here that are 500 years old. And I got this one that's 9,000 years old. I'm supposed to accept the other ones actually are accurate dates, but this one I'm not supposed to accept that it doesn't have accurate dates. And then I have to add, you have to add all this other stuff, the flood and the tree rings went faster. I mean, you're adding all of these steps just to make so it can fit inside of the story. I'm all saying
that's fine. Your logic is fine, and your conclusions are fine. The only thing is that it doesn't prove creationism wrong. It doesn't make it a fact that tree's 9,000 years old. It just makes your logic correct.
Let's say you agree with me 100% that tree is 9,000 years old. What would you say to that? If you go, okay, this has been totally confirmed, I mean, that's what it's known for.
What I would say is there's no way to confirm that. There's no way to confirm that. You have no idea how fast those tree rings formed.
But then there's no way to confirm any tree ring by that logic. There's no way to...
Exactly.
We can't even... But that's science. I don't know, like obviously science doesn't claim absolute truth, but that there's no... The tree has 9,000 years on it. I don't know. I don't know how else to interpret that.
Mm-hmm. It has 9,000 rings on it. I agree with you that it has 9,000 rings. I just can't agree on how quickly they formed because I don't know. But you seem to know how quickly they formed.
But like even if you're gonna go there, like I said, even if okay, maybe some of them, maybe two win a year or something, 2 formed a year or something, you still have a lot of room for error. Basically, like if the world is 6,000 years old, okay, this is a 3,000-year-old extra. So you have 3,000 years of wiggle room. Some rings can grow faster, some can grow slower. You have a lot of wiggle room there. And if you're going to go, hey, that one could have just formed really fast, right? So it got those extra rings, then I can easily say, no, it actually went slow, and the tree is really 18,000 years old. I can sway it any way. But ultimately, when we look at it, it's still 9,000 years old. We only can go by that until we have alternate, evidence.
What you're kind of saying is that there's no evidence of anything that could speed up those tree rings, right?
Yeah. Unless there's something I don't know about how tree rings actually can speed up in certain seasons or whatever.
Yeah, well, we do know that they can a little bit.
Yeah, but I mean, that's why it's 3,000 years of wiggle room. You have 3,000 years of wiggle room right there.
Yeah, yeah. I think my point is just extremely simple. I mean, I've never said that any of evolution's logic is stupid or throw it out the window. It all makes sense. It all follows from your assumption. Your assumption is that one tree ring forms a year. There's 9,000 rings on that tree, therefore it's 9,000 years old.
It's actually 9,500.
Okay. And there's nothing wrong with that logic. Nothing wrong. It's just saying it doesn't make it true.
But it's most likely the best answer. I mean, it's most likely true. Like, that's the best answer we have so far.
It's likely true if tree rings form one a year for 9,500 years. Yes. I can't confirm that, though. I can't confirm that they formed for one a year for 9,500 years. I can't confirm that part.
But I mean, like, if it was...
That's the faith part. That's the faith part.
It's... Come on. It's a little more than faith. It's a little more than... I think it's...
You have faith that tree rings have formed one a year for 9,500 years. You have faith in that. It's saying, like, I have faith that this tree in my backyard is 5 years old because of his 5 rings. Right. You certainly did not observe the tree growing for 9,500 years, so you have faith that those tree rings are telling you what...
But I didn't observe the dinosaurs die, but I still know the dinosaurs die. I didn't see the murderer commit the murder, but I know, based on the evidence, that guy's the murderer. We have to go by the evidence. We don't go by, we have to see the whole entire, process.
I'm not saying we have to say it, I'm just saying it doesn't prove it true.
But you have to, would you agree it's probably the best explanation right now is that
it is the best explanation.
It requires
if you
the
accept
fewest assumptions, and it has the most evidence that it's just 95,000 years old.
The fewest assumptions.
Or 9,500.
But you do agree that it has assumptions?
No.
One tree ring a year is not an assumption?
If there is one, if there is any assumption, the one is that for some reason I'm dumb to think that tree rings just grow one a year, because 10,000 years is not that long on a geological scale. That is not long at all. Not much happens in that realm. Not much happens to change tree rings.
Not much happens. You're doing confirmation bias right there. You're saying
based on every other scientist in the world is going to agree with me on that one.
I understand, but that's confirmation bias. You're saying not that much happens in 10,000 years based on the history I know of geology. You can't prove that history of geology, though.
But then, how do you even have the word geology? How do you even know that word? How do you know that word geology? Because it's a proven science. It's a well-known science. The fact that you can even say it is the fact that you know it. That's the consensus. That's what everybody's come to.
Well, technically, I've heard that science doesn't prove things. They prove things incorrect.
Sure.
So technically, I mean, if you want to be technical about it. But no, I mean, the point is extremely simple. You didn't see the tree rings form, therefore you have faith that the tree rings form at one a year, and if they do, then it's 9,500 years, yes.
So, but mine would require the least assumptions. It has the evidence, so wouldn't mine be most likely true, based on that?
How is your assumption of uniformitarianism any different than my assumption of catastrophism?
Because it actually suggests a bunch of things. If you say the Earth was created in 6 days, that opens up a whole door of this, and this, and this. My tree doesn't say anything about whether God exists or evolution or anything about that. It just says this tree is 9,000 years old.
The scientist says that.
What?
The tree doesn't say that. The scientist says that.
Well, I mean, come on, there's eventually a point you have to get your foot off the ground. You know, how can you trust your senses? Eventually you gotta get your foot off the ground and go, okay, this says this says this, and this says this, so I'm just gonna assume that this says this as well. I mean, it all, it very confirms each other.
The point is, prove your uniformitarianism and you've got a point. You can't prove it, I can't prove mine. I'm not suggesting that I can.
But
we're in the same boat.
It's the best. We're not on equal grounds. You do agree with that, right? We're not on the same level with that.
We can't prove. Neither you or I can prove our assumption.
No, do you agree? Okay, let's say I had 5 things to convict the killer, and you only had 1 thing to set him free. Is that the kind of situation we're in here? Basically, I have better reasons to think that the tree is 9,000 years old, and you don't.
No, we have the same evidence. We're interpreting it different based on our assumptions.
So you think we're on equal footing with that on the tree?
Yeah.
But mine requires the least amount of assumptions and has the most evidence to support it.
All right, what's your assumption?
My only assumption is that, for some reason, I think tree rings happen once every year.
Mm-hmm. Why do you believe that?
Based on the fact that we even know how tree rings work. That's just based on that fact.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense.
No one's arguing that tree rings happen once a year. No one's debating that. That's everybody agrees on that, and that's the whole thing.
All right. Well, I think we understand where we're at. We definitely should do this again sometime.
Yeah. You're just I'm really floored about the creationism because the way you speak is just completely that's Jesus, that's the Christian, right? You know, but I never hear it from these Answers in Genesis people. I never hear the Jesus stuff, you know? It's always about the Old Testament, you know? And I think that just misses the whole point, you know?
Yeah, I know. I see where you come to that. I mean, their big thing, and I tried to explain it through the Jewish and Greek culture difference.
Yeah. I know. I got you. Yeah.
They feel that we live in this culture now that doesn't understand why we need a savior, and so if they can explain why we need a savior and defend that, then...
Well, I mean, we're just sinners. I mean, that's just it. We're sinners either way. Whether Adam and Eve ate the fruit, we're still sinners, you know? And Jesus needs to save us from our sin.
Well, then, that's not going to work.
I don't think it does. I think it's fine.
It's true, but it's not enough, because eventually you're going to question, why did God make me this way? Why did God make me so horrible that I need a savior?
Well, it's not He made you. He made you with free will, right? So you're making your choices to be sinful. That sort of thing. To me, that's just the Garden of Eden is just really, that's just the origin story. You know, that doesn't matter. I mean, that doesn't, you can still explain it.
Sorry, I gotta wrap it up. I'm being called away.
All right.
Well,
yeah, I definitely want to do maybe like morality and annihilationism next, because I found some interesting things about maybe hell is not actually eternal. That's what I don't know if that's your field, but yeah, definitely.
I may not be the expert in that area, but yeah, we can talk.
Oh yeah,
about
you're not really. I mean, you're not really in the philosophical area. Okay, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, this was really great, and you're a totally nice guy. I love the chat. It was great.
No problem. We'll do it again. All right.
All right.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you. See ya.